All right, today we're diving into something that sounds like it's straight out of science fiction. We're going to explore this really deep, kind of shocking connection between two fields you'd think have absolutely nothing in common: the physics of atoms and the code of our DNA. It turns out a single AI breakthrough is starting to reveal a universal language that might just govern them both. So let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. Think about it. On one hand, you've got the laws of physics, right? The unyielding fundamental rules that govern atoms and energy. And on the other hand, you've got the code of life itself, this incredibly complex, dynamic script that builds a brain or a liver or a tree. I mean, what on earth could possibly connect those two things? Well, the answer, and this is the core idea for today, is that they both seem to speak a similar language, a kind of grammar, a set of rules that are fundamentally constrained by reality. And what's so wild is that for the very first time, we have a tool, generative AI, that's actually becoming fluent in this deep, universal language. It's starting to connect the dots between the rules of matter and the rules of life. Okay, so to really understand how AI is managing to read the book of life, we first have to take a quick step back and look at how it learned to understand the physical world. This is really our foundation for everything else we're going to talk about. Now, there's this really fascinating concept here called convergence. So get this, researchers found that if you take a whole bunch of different AI models, built with totally different architectures, different approaches, and you train them all on the same task, understanding the physics of matter, they all end up learning the exact same fundamental representation of it. It's like reality itself is this ultimate teacher, forcing them all to arrive at the same essential truths about how the world works, no matter how they started. Okay. So keep that idea of convergence in your head, because now we pivot to our main topic. A brand new paper called DNA-Diffusion is suggesting that this exact same thing, this convergence, is happening a level up, not with atoms and physics, but with the rules that control life itself within our DNA. So the really cool thing about this research is that the AI isn't even looking at the genes that code for proteins, the stuff we usually think of as the building blocks of life. Nope. It's focused on something else entirely, called regulatory DNA. The best way to think about this is it's the giant instruction manual for the genome. It's not the bricks themselves, it's the blueprint. It's the foreman on the construction site, telling the body exactly how and when to use all those bricks. So what does this regulatory DNA actually do? Well, you can think of it as building the master control panel for our entire genome. It creates all these little components that act like on-off switches, volume dials, even timers for our genes. It's the part of our DNA that's not about what to build, but how and when to build it. And that is the crucial point here. These sequences code for control. They're the conductors of the entire biological orchestra. And this whole idea brings us to this amazing field called epigenetics. It basically answers a fundamental puzzle you've probably wondered about. How can a cell in your brain and a cell in your skin have the exact same DNA but do completely different jobs? Well, the answer is this layer of control we've been talking about. The regulatory DNA is what allows the environment and context to change how those same genes are used. It's how you get this incredible variety of life from just a single genetic blueprint. Okay, so the big question is, how in the world did an AI learn this incredibly complex biological grammar? Well, the secret sauce is in this specific type of AI they used. It's called a diffusion model. And the way it works has this just beautiful parallel to a process we're all very familiar with. This is just a brilliant analogy for how it works. First, the diffusion model starts with pure random noise, just total chaos. You can think of this as being like random genetic mutation. Then, step by step, it gradually denoises that chaos, slowly refining it based on the rules it's learned. This is almost exactly like natural selection, right? Applying pressure to weed out what doesn't work and keep what does. And what do you get at the end? A structured, functional sequence that actually does something useful. It's literally like evolution in a bottle. And this is probably the most important thing to understand from that analogy. The AI doesn't know biology in the way a student does from a textbook. It's not some intelligent designer thinking through the problem. It is a pure discovery engine. It is simply learning through massive trial and error which sequences work and which ones are junk. It's just discovering what's functional, which is the exact same tool evolution has been using for billions of years. Okay, so now let's bring our two stories together. Remember where we started? With the AI that learned the rules of physical matter, and now this new AI that's learning the rules of life? This is the moment it all clicks into place. This is where the really deep pattern starts to reveal itself. I mean, just look at this deep parallel. It's pretty mind-blowing. In the first case, you had different AIs being forced to obey the laws of physics. And what happened? They all converged. They all discovered the same core principles of matter. Now, on the other side, you have an AI being forced to obey the laws of biology. And what does it find? The fundamental logic of gene control. The inputs are totally different, right? Atoms versus DNA. But the underlying process? It's identical. In both cases, a useful, functional outcome only emerges when the system is forced to play by the rules of the real world.
And this points to a powerful, universal principle. It really doesn't matter if the constraints are the laws of physics that govern atoms or the laws of biology that govern how genes are expressed. It seems that when you force any learning system to find a solution that actually works in the real world, it's going to converge on the same fundamental answers. It's like there's a universal grammar for what works.
So, okay, what does all this actually mean? What's the big takeaway here? How should we even think about this incredible new capability? I know it's really easy to get lost in all the sci-fi tropes that come to mind, but I think the reality is actually way more interesting than that. You know, the temptation is to frame this as playing God, right? Or inventing life from scratch. But that's really the wrong way to look at what's happening. A much better, much more accurate way to frame it is that we're finally learning to read the instruction manual. We're not inventing new biological rules out of thin air. We are decoding the ones that nature has been using for eons. We're discovering the laws that were already there. And that right there is the key. This AI technology is basically an accelerator. Think about it. Evolution found all these incredibly elegant regulatory solutions through billions of years of painstaking trial and error. This AI is using a very similar discovery process, but it's compressing that vast timeline down into days or weeks. It is a powerful tool for decoding, not an act of divine creation. And that really leaves us with this final, pretty profound thought. This convergence that we're seeing, from the basic physics of matter all the way up to the complex regulation of life, it really suggests that these aren't totally separate domains. Maybe they're just different layers, different expressions of the same fundamental language of information and function. The rules that build a star might not be so different from the rules that build a cell. And for the very first time in human history, we're finally learning how to read that language.